Hi, I'm Dave Schmittou. I'm the principal at Milan Middle School in Milan, Michigan. It's a tremendous opportunity to be able to do this interview and talk to you about a lot of the things that are happening here in Milan. I have an amazing job, and I'm blessed to work with some amazing people every single day. Lately, Milan Middle School has been the center of a lot of attention. We've had a lot of other schools come down here to Milan to check out what we're doing at the middle school because our students are achieving and growing and thriving. We're finding a lot of success. It was recently suggested I do a series of interviews and record them and just talk about some of what's happening here and the mindset shifts that have taken place, because there's a lot of what we're doing here that can be duplicated, replicated, and even enhanced in a lot of other places. So I just consider myself extremely lucky to be able to do this. This is, like I said, the first video that we're doing. We're hoping to be able to do a few more and do a series and release them every few weeks, but this is the first one. And as such, it's going to present more of an overview, a mindset, a philosophy of some of the stuff that we're doing here in Milan. I do have some notes to guide me because a lot of times the questions I'm asked are big questions. They're profound questions. I want to be able to reference some of my notes as we go through. Recently I had a conversation with somebody and I made the statement that a bad grade is only motivation to a good student. I want that to resonate for a second. A bad grade is only motivation to a good student. Here in Milan, we've had a lot of conversations about motivation and what motivates kids to succeed, and whose job it is to motivate kids. And that's kind of the impetus behind this first interview, this first video, is motivation and what motivates learning, what motivates student success, what is student success. A lot of big questions, but it's a foundational question that has to be answered before you can start moving forward. Because if you don't know how you're going to define success, you're not going to be able to get there. You're not going to know when you've achieved at your destination. So that's going to be the focus behind this first conversation. And I'm going to do this through a series of analogies. For example, I'm a runner. I run every single morning. I'm not a world-class sprinter by any stretch of the imagination. I've never won a trophy proclaiming my greatness, yet every single morning I continue to lace up my shoes, get up before the sun comes up every single morning, either head downstairs on the treadmill or head outside and just go for a couple of mile run and go for a long run every single weekend. I have no illusions of ever becoming the fastest person on the street, but I do aim to get faster every single time I go out. I even log all of my miles. I have a notebook next to my bed, and I chart every single mile I run. Because a few years ago I made the goal to myself that I wanted to be able to claim someday that I've run around the world, basically 25,000 miles, the circumference of the Earth. So I chart my progress. I even subscribe to Runner's World magazine. I love to read about what others are doing because that motivates me. It inspires me. Because I'm not inspired by trophies. I'm not inspired by awards. But I am inspired by progress. I'm inspired by my own growth. At the same time, I don't find myself defeated by my failures. I get challenged to overcome a lot of my failures. I learn from the successes of others, yet I work towards my own personal growth. I know where I am today. I can go and look at my journal and know exactly where I am in meeting my lifetime goal. And I can easily determine where I was yesterday. I can look at my goals and I can sign up for races so that I can measure my progress and evaluate where I am and my overall health and my speed. And that helps me evaluate where I am in meeting my own standards, my own expectations. I'm not motivated by labels that other people put on me. I'm motivated by what I see in myself. This is what truly intrinsic motivation looks like. And I believe that this is where all lasting growth is rooted. In the American educational system today, I think we've strayed away from working with students to measure their own growth and set personal challenges for achievement. I think that we tend to think it's our responsibility to provide some sort of motivation to the kids that we hope to teach. We hope that we can provide them with enough incentive to drive students to learn. But in reality, all we're trying to do is try to get kids to, quote-unquote, play school a little bit better. We manufacture grades. We place those on top of report cards or on top of individual assignments because we want students to know whether or not they're pleasing us. If their grade's not up to top-notch, we assume that students will use that negative feedback and somehow be inspired or motivated to learn more. students aren't encouraged to learn simply for the sake of learning. They're not taught that growth is more important than achievement. They're taught indirectly by our expectations that making grown-ups happy and completing a bunch of tasks, whether or not learning is accomplished or not, is all that really matters. Here at Milan Middle School, I'm blessed to work with some amazing teachers. Some of the best teachers I've ever had the opportunity to work with are here in Milan. But I also believe that teachers all across America are overwhelmed, they're overworked, overevaluated, underappreciated. In America, we've got more than 100,000 school administrators. A lot of other people out there just like me, and most of them began their career as teachers. In America, we've got more than 6 million teachers, and I would argue that most of those 6 million teachers probably became teachers because of their own experiences in school. I would say most of them were probably good students, knew how to get good grades. But unfortunately, this leads to a vicious cycle. We've got teachers who became teachers because of their own experiences, who then become administrators, who creates a system that basically tries to reproduce what allowed them to become successful. And the cycle works for those students who choose to grow up and live their lives in the public school workforce. But it also creates a distinct disadvantage for the hundreds of millions of other kids who are going to grow up to work in an evolving, highly engaging, fluid, flat workforce. Without an educational system that provides students with resources and opportunities necessary to complete a global environment that now includes billions of others that they're competing against, billions, our students are going to be in trouble. So somehow we need to change the system so that we're not trying to just reproduce and create new teachers and new administrators. We're trying to create students that can be successful in the real world. To try to combat this recently, states all across America have tried to enact new standards, new frameworks, whatever we want to call them. We've heard of the Common Core, we've heard of the Next Gen Science Standards, we've heard of the C3 Social Studies Framework, and we've got this illusion that simply by creating new standards, new frameworks, that better teaching is going to take place and more learning is going to take place, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. What most people fail to realize is that those standards and those frameworks truly aren't new standards. It's not new things that need to be taught. Their impetus, their root is to try to change the way that instruction takes place, to try to give the students more relevancy, to give the students more inquiry, to give the students more investigative, real-world application of knowledge. We know, research has indicated that one of the key factors in all learning is getting feedback. Feedback drives learning. Give you some real-world examples. Think about a toddler learning how to walk. That toddler, as he takes his or her first few steps, falls down, realizes that falling down hurts, it's uncomfortable. It receives some sort of feedback and says, I don't want that to happen again. So it works hard to try to overcome that. It uses its sense of balance, its sense of rhythm, its cadence to try to perfect the art of walking. But it falls down over and over and over again. And each time it falls down, it's gaining more and more feedback. Every time it stands up, it's gaining more feedback. So that eventually it learns a skill that will last a lifetime. Take a similar analogy with learning how to ride a bike. Kids, when they learn how to ride their bike, they are taught how to ride their bike not by having mom or dad sit them down on the couch and say, oh, you listen to me, little Johnny. I want you to know that on your bike you've got 2 handlebars, you've got a brake, you've got 2 pedals and a chain. Go out there and ride your bike. They're not taught all of the parts of the bike and expected to go out there and master the skill of riding the bike. They're also not taught how to ride the bike by saying, Johnny, I want you to sit in the driveway and you're going to watch me drive up and down the road, and then I'll model this for you. I'll model the skill, and you'll be able to go out there and just replicate it. That's not how learning takes place. When a kid learns how to ride their bike, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, some guardian, brother, sister, normally puts a child on the bike, runs alongside of them, holding them up, and eventually lets them go. It's very rare that that first time the child just takes off and goes. Normally, the child falls down a couple times, falls down dozens of times, hundreds of times, and each time they learn how to correct their balance, they learn how to correct their skill set. We've been told before that once you learn how to ride a bike, you never forget. I have a belief that a lot of that's because of how the child was taught. They were given the opportunity to fail. They were given the opportunity to fall down. Yet at the same time, they weren't told and given the label, you're a failure. They were prompted to get back up. Mom or dad rode alongside of them, encouraged them, corrected them a little bit, gave them some guidance. It was that feedback loop that allowed the learning to take place. I have a vision for Milan Middle School, and that vision includes every single teacher teaching skills, teaching concepts, teaching disciplines and subject areas in the same way that parents teach their kids how to ride a bike. It's called a progressive struggle. Kids will fall down, but at the same time, they're going to get back up. Teachers aren't going to stand before them and say, here are all the things you need to do, just regurgitate it back to me and you're going to have these lifelong skills. I also don't foresee teachers simply saying, just copy me, model. I'm going to stand up here and model for you what needs to take place, and you're going to learn it. Kids need to be given real feedback. Real feedback comes from the natural environment. It also comes from others. Students need to get realistic feedback about where they currently are in their learning process, so that eventually they can overcome. They can learn from their mistakes. They can learn from their own successes. They'll learn that growth is more important than achievement. As a child learns how to ride their bike, they never say, okay, I've got this skill mastered. I've got a little kid at home. I've got a 7-year-old who learned how to ride his bike, but he's still trying to do new things. He's trying to pop wheelies. He's trying to ride no-handed. He's trying to make skid marks. He's constantly trying to take his new knowledge and take it to that more advanced level. He knows where he is, but he doesn't say, that's the end-all, that's the be-all, I've achieved. His growth is more important. That's what students need to be able to do in schools. We need to get our teachers to the place where they're not putting students up and giving them false validation. False validation simply because of their effort and their work ethic and making them think that they've achieved. When a child is learning how to walk and talk, ride a bike, we don't tell them, you've got it, when they're still in the learning process. We don't say, oh, you're an A because you're in the process and you're working hard. You're an A when you've achieved. The growth process is more important than achievement. That's the mindset we're trying to create here in Milan. As we go through and we display more videos and I do more interviews, you'll be able to learn exactly what that looks like in the real world and how we apply that here at Milan Middle School on a daily basis. But ultimately, what I want you to walk away with is the understanding that here in Milan, we care about growth. We care about achievement. We care about every single student. We also understand that learning needs to be intrinsically motivating, that students need to be motivated on their own, simply for the sake of learning, not because we say you're good at playing school.